Thank you, Robert, for the wonderful introduction, and thank you for coming out. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and I spent a lot of my time thinking about how to do this stuff and maneuver through one of the biggest culture-changing agents that I've had the privilege to be associated with, and that is to spread entrepreneurship across the university. So I kind of added the word "why" to it today, because I think even though we've been active in this as a university for a long time, the bits and pieces of it have not really coalesced effectively, and potentially this question is still in the minds of faculty and perhaps some of the students as to why are we even doing all this stuff. So hopefully I can pull it all back together for you, and if I'm successful, by the end of the day, or not the day, by the end of 30 minutes from now, you should be replacing that word with, well, entrepreneurship across the university, of course. That's the way it should be. So let's see if I can do this justice or not. So just to get us started, let's just do a modern history of entrepreneurship at Kettering University. And I'm going to say modern because I've only been here 20 years, and every time I say, hey, this is the first time we've done this, somebody says back in 1962 we tried it. So in the last 20 years, the word entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial mindset, and things of that nature really, in my 20 years, didn't exist on campus in any broad sense until about mid-2000s when Kern Foundation and Kettering started joining forces. Now, I'm going to put one exception. At some point in the early 90s, there was a BIT center on campus. It was in a business incubator of some sort. So these thoughts are not new. It's just that perhaps for the first time, we're going about it in a kind of a university-wide fashion with a different flavor. So just a quick history. Somewhere in early 2007s, or 2006 actually, was some preliminary work. This Kern Family Foundation, which is out in Milwaukee, and it's owned by, or established by Mr. and Mrs. Bob Kern. These are a retired industrialist who created huge industrial generators and things of that nature. And he woke up one day and said, well, I'm sure it wasn't one day, but he said, you know what, these engineers, they don't understand the business end of what they're doing. And that's what this country needs. He's a very US-centered individual, you know, old-fashioned person, and I get to appreciate that actually over time. So that foundation said, hey, we're going to roll out this entrepreneurial mindset in engineering curriculum. They started inviting schools. Which schools? Small, private, technical, Midwestern schools. They left all the public schools out because, you know, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's public money, private money. They just wanted to really be able to manage this as best as they could. Also, they wanted to work with these small universities that are technically bent so they can learn what it means. They really didn't know what it meant either. It was really just a small notion that we got to do something different for engineers of tomorrow. So we got two, as Robert mentioned, we got two quick initial phase grants from them. Pretty soon, there was about 24 universities that were invited to participate at some point. There was 3 groups of 8. 3 times 8 is 24, right? Yeah, those are the fundamentals that we got to be good at. 3 times 8, 24, and we established a network called the Kern Entrepreneurship Education Network, and as of today, and for the last several years, 19 schools have stuck with it. A very nice, steady group. We meet twice a year, and we're a network that we're constantly teaching each other how to do this. You may want to go to this keennetwork.com and kind of check it out. It's a nice website, and I'll at least play one thing from that website for you. In 2009, so we accomplished a lot of stuff from 2007 to 2009, and I'll give you a list of it. You know, we put all kinds of, you know, a couple of courses here and a minor into the curriculum. We had an entrepreneur society established at that point for the students. There was lots of good stuff going on, but in 2009, we decided we got to go across the campus. We got to go in all the curriculum. We can't just do it on the edges of the activity, you know, just as an extracurricular thing. We got to get into the curriculum, and that's always been the intention, is to get into the curriculum, not just outside of the classroom. And that's the challenge of it, which we'll talk about. So in 2009, there was an expansion phase. It was called Entrepreneurship Across the Curriculum, and it was a pilot workshop. Some of you attended a couple of workshops back in 2009, and those were the pilot workshops for the faculty. Sorry, not for the students. It was for the faculty. And the idea was to start creating the value proposition for an entrepreneurially minded engineer. You know, what does that mean? So through those workshops, the faculty engaged in the discussion as to what is it and how do I do it if I'm interested in it? So it was kind of a value proposition and the beginning of the culture change at Kettering. And then, as Robert mentioned, there was a larger grant that we got from the Kern Family Foundation, and that from 2010 all the way through 2014, and perhaps a little bit more than that is somewhere towards the end of 2014. That's the terms of our grant. We're now in the phase of entrepreneurship across the university, more or less with the same goals in mind, to penetrate the curriculum of engineering and science with elements of an entrepreneurial mindset, while we're also across campus in everything that we do, not necessarily just the teaching in the classroom, in everything that we do, bring that mindset with us. And I guarantee you there is no other school that can benefit from this mindset more than Kettering can because of our co-op program. And I'll touch up on that as to how does this translate itself into your immediate life at Kettering, not necessarily what you might do 10 years from now. So this is what I'm going to do. I don't know how many of the students are exposed to this, but in the workshops that we did with the faculty, we introduced a book called Innovation by Kurt Carlson. You guys remember that? Mm-hmm. And the very first thing in it was this thing called NABC. It was a method that we used to create or define every value proposition for any problem in the world. You know, you want to, I mean, engineers do this all the time. You have to identify a need, an approach, and the benefit and the competition for it. That's what the NABC is. You do that in your design classes all the time. So I'm going to do this on this program with you here today. What is the need for entrepreneurship and all of this stuff that we're talking about? Is there a need that we're trying to solve? So, by the way, this can take an hour to just explain the need. So I'm just going to give you tidbits. And these are things that these are not my opinions necessarily. This is just culmination of things I've been reading. The Cold War era, which is, you know, post-1950s all the way through 80s, right? The Cold War era, education, technical education was highly focused on fundamentals. The space age came out of that. You know, you had to be a good science-based engineer. Okay? There wasn't a whole lot of attention given to what do you do with the products you design, because there were other people that would take care of that and bring it to the market. So that division existed for the longest time. So the education of an engineer and a scientist was basically on the depth of technical knowledge, which is not a bad thing, and certainly we're not about to propose that we ought to change that. Post-Cold War era, there's lots of write-up. I think the word that you hear out there is that we're in this innovation economy. Probably you've heard stuff like that, knowledge economy, innovation economy, stuff like that, right? Especially in the last 5, 6 years as manufacturing jobs kept flying off the, you know, out of the country and all of that stuff that happened. I'm just going to give you a couple of tidbits on that. I'm not here to make you believe this or not. In the book of Engineer of 2020, I think some of you might have read that. Innovation is the key to the future success of this country and other countries for that matter, and the whole world. And engineering is essential to this task. That's a quote out of that book. You make of it what you would like. I really believe this. Then I'm going to go to Kurt Carlson's book, because the key word here is innovation. And what does that mean? Now, a lot of us engineers interpret innovation as inventing something new. Look at what Kurt Carlson, who believes his company is an innovation company, he's the CEO of the Stanford Research Institute. His company produces new stuff all the time. This is how he defines it. Innovation is the process of creating and delivering new customer value in the marketplace. So he's basically saying, Mr. and Mrs. Engineer, it's not enough to invent stuff. you got to start thinking about who you're inventing it for. What problem are you solving with your invention? Is somebody going to buy it? How are you going to bring it to the market? So think of a spectrum. You know, just draw a line, maybe a colorful rainbow type thing. The words innovation and entrepreneurship, a lot of people have subliminal messages about that stuff. When we say innovation, a lot of people think invention. When we say entrepreneurship, a lot of people think business. In reality, to me, they're the same words, maybe a little bit more emphasis on one end of the spectrum than the other. So the spectrum is you invent something and somebody will buy it. That's one end of the spectrum, that's the other end of the spectrum. So to me, the closer you are to the invention end, we're talking the language of innovation, which is invention for a purpose. And the more you push it into the market, the language of entrepreneurship takes over. But to me, these are not separate. There's not a line that you can throw one thing over that line and say, okay, now you do it. And that's what we want our engineering and sciences students and faculty and staff to start thinking like, to see the whole picture. I'm going to show you a, well, actually, I want to skip this little video. This was a little more motivational video. It's on the keen, but I think our time may be a little short. So I'll skip that. Let's go right to the approach. So if the need is that we need our engineer and our technical graduates to be more aware of innovation and entrepreneurship, then what is the approach? How are we going to solve that need? If innovation is the key to the future in this country and the whole world, as far as I'm concerned, what's the approach? Well, the approach that the current foundation has proposed, and we are believers in that, is to instill the innovation and entrepreneurial mindset throughout the Kettering education. So this is our Kettering approach, although everybody else is trying to do this in their own institution. Okay? And the way we're going to do it at Kettering is we're going to hit everything we've got. We're going to put it in our curriculum, one way or the other. We're going to take all our co-curricular activities and infect it with this stuff. Co-curricular, by the way, means the stuff that goes on outside the class is still is teaching you something. For example, the big player in there is the co-op. Your co-op, your experiential learning, is part of your education, even though it's not happening on campus. And the extracurricular is all this stuff you do outside the classroom while you're on campus, such as clubs and societies and all the other interactions that you do, projects that you get into outside the classroom, things like that. For us, like the Entrepreneur Society is an extracurricular activity. So we're going to hit all of this stuff to instill this entrepreneurial mindset. But the key word is the mindset. So what that means, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more today, and that's the crux of the value proposition. So let me tell you what we're not about to do. We're not here to encourage every engineer to become a business owner. That's what this is not about. As a matter of fact, when you're coming out of the school, already and tooled up to go into the industry with XX dollars of debt, deciding to own your own business is quite a risky proposition. Now, I'm not saying it's an ill-advised, but it's certainly not an advice that I can give you. Oh, you should just ignore everything else and go create your own business. That's not what we're about to do. What we want is a mindset, and we're going to get into that as to what does this mean. So give me a minute and we'll approach that. Of course, the pathway to doing all of this is through the faculty and the staff of the university. And that's why we created all those workshops for the faculty and staff, and I'll talk about that in a minute, to just get people to believe in this and create their own value proposition for it, and then their own approach for doing it. Because there's no way I can mandate that faculty XYZ should change their course content because I believe this is good stuff. That's not going to work, you know that, all of us know that. You have to decide that on your own, and that's what these workshops, the EAU workshops, were all about. Now the B part, the benefit. If we, whatever this entrepreneurial mindset is, and it is basically just as a short, again, it's not about creating business or learning how to create business. To me, that's the practice of entrepreneurial mindset. So there's room for it, but that's just practicing it. The mindset itself has to do with certain way of thinking, certain attributes that we want to develop. To me, it's nothing less than enhancing the imprint that Kettering University puts on its graduates. And I say enhancing, not necessarily changing it or throwing away what we already do to you guys. Every college graduate coming out of any college has an imprint. Whether you like it or not, that university, by the virtue of having spent 4 years of your time there, will put an imprint on you. Kettering has its own imprint. And if you want to know what it is, just listen to the feedback from the industry. We love your kids. They're doers. They get the job done. That's what we hear about you all the time. They're not afraid of anything. Believe me, there's a lot of other college graduates that don't get that compliment. You know what they say about them? They said, man, we got to take a year breaking them in. That's what we hear from other ones. They don't know how to work in teams. They don't know what deadlines mean, work ethics. Not that they're technically bad. That's the other engineers coming out of other universities. So that's your imprint. We want to enhance that. And I'll keep putting that. So for the students, the benefit for the students, if we do this right, you're going to be better prepared to face a global job market. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk about this in the last several years. It's a global job market. You know, if economy went down, jobs disappeared, and all of a sudden it all became global and all. It's true. This has been forecasted for years. The job market that you guys are stepping in is not the one I stepped in, and it's not the one your parents have stepped in. The ones your parents stepped in had some sense of stability in it. There was a GM that was going to be there forever. It doesn't exist, but that's not the thing I want you to think about. I want you to think about how do you own and plan your own career. I want you to take this entrepreneurial mindset as a new frame of seeing everything, which is, it's mine, I'm going to make it happen. Now, if you could apply that to your education first before you get out of here, that would revolutionize Kettering education. And believe me, the faculty would love it because we no longer have to deal with a bunch of passive students. That's the dream of every faculty member, is to have active students. Now, are we doing anything to promote that? That's another story. That's what we're hoping to do that, okay? You have to be able to maximize your potential as an, here's a new word, entrepreneurially person. This is actually much more relevant to us than entrepreneurship. Intrapreneurship is having the same mindset that entrepreneurs have, except not in your own business, having it and implementing it in somebody else's business. You know, whatever companies you guys are working at, will they let you to think a little bit independently, identify opportunities, bring solutions forth? Will they entertain that kind of behavior? Or will they say, oh, you're a maverick, you're not doing your job? If you hear that, get out of that company. If you're in an entrepreneurial company, this mindset is going to allow you to maximize your potential. By the way, there's a lot of companies that want that. They want engineers that maximize their own potential without being told what to do. Okay? It's no longer about do this assignment and only this assignment. So there's plenty of, I mean, this is really a personality building piece, this entrepreneurial mindset. This is really an attribute building piece as far as I'm concerned. For the faculty, it took me a long time, as I was doing the original workshops here, it took me a long time to bring the value proposition of this thing into one thing. And I finally got it, at least for me. So I'll just give you one bullet. For the first time in my 20 years at Kettering and my 25 years in education, when I start talking about entrepreneurship mindset, I found the language and the context in which I could talk to all of my colleagues without worrying about which disciplines we come from, without worrying about our turf. This may be strange to you students. What the hell is this turf war talk? Believe me, I will protect my curriculum, and I won't give any of it up to anybody else because I don't have enough time for me to teach all the good stuff I want to teach you. For the first time, when I started talking about this, I noticed that a sense of collaboration is created. There's a freedom in that discussion. There's a common context. There's a language we all can agree on. And it goes way beyond technical knowledge. This is the first time I could speak with my liberal studies colleagues, because what they do is actually more relevant than what I do in my classroom to this subject. You know, I was so excited about that because I could see. So that's, for me, that's the value proposition in itself, even if we don't do anything else. For the society, of course, which is at the end of all of this stuff, hopefully we're all going to do something good for the society. The creating of the new economies through innovation, I think that's a given fact by now that, without innovation, you're going to just run out of the old economy. Sooner or later, everything's going to get sparsed out because there's always going to be cheaper labor and cheaper resources somewhere else. Okay? Also, this is the one that I think myself, and based on 7 years of working with students in the Entrepreneur Society, this is something that captures the idealism of our students much better than anything else. And that is creating sustainable solutions for global problems. And there's an animal out there called social entrepreneurship. And it took us 3 years to convince the foundation that it exists. Now they bought it. Say, oh, okay, that too. Okay? It took us a long time. They weren't focused on it. Our students, believe me, when we sit around and talk about our business ventures and things in the Entrepreneur Society, the number one thing on their mind is not money. The number one thing is, I want to do something good. Now, that may be in solving somebody's problem, solving a bigger problem. Why not raise the bar on our students? Why not say, somewhere in your life you should be thinking about this? Now, the C part, the competition. I'll give you the whole list all at once. Competition means barrier to entry, or somebody else that's going to keep you from succeeding. In the academia, you got lots of them. Tradition is number one. Academic traditions are very hard to change. It's a tradition-driven business. So any new idea is going to get resistance right away. Packed curriculum. It's true. Our curriculum are so packed. I mean, it's been chopped up over the years. We gave 25% of it to liberal studies. We gave another 25% to general education. There's nothing left in engineering, man. Now you want more? Short terms. What, in 10 weeks? What else do you want me to do in 10 weeks? I'm already teaching 15 weeks in 10 weeks. Co-op interruptions. Every 3 months, just when I get them all nice and warmed up, they disappear. And then they come back as if they never heard me. Yeah, there, see. Finances. Who's got money for this? This is expensive stuff, man. Personnel. We don't have the people. Fill your own blank. There's plenty of this stuff. But then again, if you've ever done any kind of entrepreneurial thinking, you know that as soon as you think of an idea, you can think of 10 reasons why not to do it, right? Our prime mission, therefore, is to instill the innovation and entrepreneurship mindset in our students. And again, I keep highlighting mindset. Develop entrepreneurially minded engineering graduates. Now, this is the next thing I'm hitting the foundation over the head with. They are very engineering-centric because Bob Kearns was an engineer. And I said, well, what about the sciences students? No, just engineers. Well, we'll keep pushing on that. As far as I'm concerned, this applies to the engineering and sciences students. It doesn't matter. You're all technical people. All right, then, what about the business kids? Yeah, I know Kettering doesn't have a whole lot of them, but what about them? They have a different challenge. By the way, they need this worse than we do. Because if you think entrepreneurship is welcome in business schools, you're mistaken. Business schools have their own traditional courses that don't have time and room for this stuff. Finance, accounting, things like that. They have the same dilemma. However, if they want to adopt this, they have to do one other thing. They have to keep saying, we want a technically minded MBA. They have to do the opposite. They got to start introducing more technical subjects in their business environment. So this is relevant there too. It's just got to juxtapose a little bit of change. But from now on, whenever I say engineer, believe me, I mean engineering, science, and business. I mean all of you guys. So what is it? What is this entrepreneurial mindset? Well, let me give you a list of attributes that I have dug out of various different publications. So you will know an entrepreneurially minded engineer, science, business person, when you see this stuff. Attains deep knowledge of fundamentals. That's number one. It's always going to be number one. Students, don't kid yourself. You're not going to be an engineer if your fundamentals lack. Don't ever let your faculty members to replace fundamentals with fluff. However, I am the one here promoting to put the so-called fluff on top of it. Here's what an entrepreneurial mindset does. They find opportunity for creative problem solving and societal needs. Okay? Now, faculty, we confuse this usually with giving them a design project that's open-ended. A design project that's open-ended is not the same as looking for opportunities for the problems themselves. It's one step higher. Our students do very well when you define the design boundary and say, okay, within this boundary, go get creative. You do really well. Well, what if I don't tell you what the problem is at all? Can you find it yourself? That's what we want. That's what companies want. What are the opportunities? Engineers, engineer, the entrepreneurial mind engineer, engineers products for commercialization and sustainability. So again, you have an eye on the end of the process, which is, can this be commercialized? And what does it mean? I'm not saying that you have to do it alone, but can you at least talk to the person that's going to help you with this? Remember, it's all teamwork anyway. Is proficient in communicating the value of ideas to customers. Boy, this is really important for engineers. And for years, industry has been telling us this in a different way. They've been telling us that, well, your engineers are fantastic, but they can't write. And then later on, they said they can't communicate. But what they really mean is this. Can you communicate your ideas? Can you be convincing? Can you be persuasive? Can you give the value proposition of what you want or what you think is right to your customer, whoever that customer might be? Now, it may be somebody who's buying something from you, or maybe somebody that you need to sell your idea to. Desires lifelong learning. Believe me, graduation from school is just the beginning. So keep an eye on this. Has integrity, tenacity, ethics, creativity, intuition. All of these things will show up as a part of this entrepreneurial mindset. Now, here's one thing I want to do, a real quick switch, because again, entrepreneurship is the thing that's much more relevant, because all of you are working out there in some company or something. So you're entrepreneurs already. At least you're employees, but I want you to become entrepreneurs. Change your frame of mind. I did that for myself as an employee of Kettering. I no longer work for Kettering, I work at Kettering. And Kettering is a wonderful place that gives me the infrastructure to do this. So if you want to just change this definition to entrepreneurial, all you got to do is change a couple of words. You still got to be good at fundamentals. You still got to find opportunities in the workplace. You don't need to look in societal needs if you don't want to. Look around where you work. And you still got to think about commercialization, sustainability, and when you go to sell your ideas, perhaps you're selling it to your coworkers and your managers. Okay? So the difference is minor between entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial. Okay? Let me skip this. That's a pyramid thing. Now, the Keen organization over the years has managed to develop certain outcomes. Okay, we finally have distilled some of this stuff to outcomes, and there's 7 outcomes, and I think as soon as you read them, you realize that most of our courses are delivering some of this stuff. Effectively collaborate in team setting. I think that happens at Kettering beautifully. Apply critical, creative thinking to ambiguous problems. That's the piece that we are doing in our design courses at least. Construct and effectively communicate a customer-appropriate value proposition. Well, we're starting to focus on this a little bit more in our teachings. Persist through and learn from failure. This is a doozy. I wonder how many professors are insisting that you must fail. Effectively manage projects through appropriate commercialization or final delivery process. This one deserves some discussion, but let me just lay them in front of you. Demonstrate voluntary social responsibility. Now, there are write-ups behind all of these outcomes, and it takes a little bit of a dealing, but take from it whatever you would like at this point. This number 7 is a little bit ambiguous. Relate personal liberties and free enterprise to entrepreneurship. This comes straight out of Bob Kern's mind that somehow liberty, personal freedom, and entrepreneurship are tied together. You can't give up one and still maintain the other one. There's a lot of truth to that, but this is one of those really fuzzy outcomes that people are trying to figure out how to deliver in their curriculum. I mean, we can pep talk about it, but how do you deliver it? So let's go back to the question of engagement. So I'm now addressing perhaps the faculty a little bit more and the staff. So we did 5 workshops. Last one, these were 8-week-long workshops. You know, lots of faculty dedicated a lot of time and effort to it, and we had lots of keynote speakers coming in, trying to get ourselves to believe that this stuff is important, and what is it? That was the whole purpose of those workshops, basically, kind of define our own. We did 5 workshops. Last one was the spring of 2011. 91 faculty members participated. I think we have somewhere around 130 faculty. So that's pretty good, good participation numbers. Then we did the similar workshops, not the same, similar workshops for the staff to get them engaged. And we did 3 workshops, last one again in spring of 2011. 85 staff members participated. Now, in each one of these, people proposed projects that they were going to do, modules they were going to add to their courses. And you as a students are probably getting some of this stuff, whether the faculty is calling it out as that's what we added to this course or not, I don't know. And we're in the process of collecting that information from the faculty, but I can tell you that NABC seemed to go rampant for a while. You know, the students were telling me, oh, every faculty is doing NABC in the class now. so which is good. As far as the student engagement goes, one of the very first things that we did, we established the KES, the Kettering Entrepreneur Society. I'm glad to say that in the 7 years that we've been working there, we've put out at least 40 student ventures. Not all active right now, but 40 student ventures, LLCs type things. And we've put in $71,000 in terms of seed funding. I had our finance minister, Ministry of Finance here establish all that data for me lately. We have elective courses, one on entrepreneurship, one on intrapreneurship. The entrepreneurship, I think that's called what's it called? The venture, innovation and venture, right? That came in early, and it's still running. And the Intrapreneurship by Larry Navarre has come in recently. We have an Innovation Entrepreneurship minor offered through the business department. And we have lots of student contests, innovation quests every Wednesday. And I will tell you in a minute, we're thinking of even bigger student contests coming. By the way, if you ever go to Kettering University's Learning Outcomes, which you can find it on our website if you type in learning outcomes, this university has committed itself through the approval of the faculty senate to certain outcomes, communication, critical thinking, sounds like the stuff we've been talking about too, which is good. And somewhere down here, one of the outcomes is entrepreneurial mindset. That is an approved outcome for our education at Kettering. So I'm glad that we have reached that level of recognition and importance. So recently we did a feedback from the faculty who were in all these workshops. And as I said, the last workshop was spring of 2011. So, and as a person who kind of stepped out of the program and is back into the program during 2011 till now, I was one of the faculty outside of the EAU, and I had the same frustration that all the faculty had, which is, what happened to all this stuff? The loop wasn't being closed. There was lots of activity, but I went to the workshop, I did something great, I'm doing stuff for my students, and nobody's talking to me. That has been a problem. We have to close it. However, as a first step, we sent a survey recently to the faculty. 35 out of the 85 existing participants answered. I appreciate it. The rest of you, I'm coming after you. You're not off the hook. You need to respond because that data is critical for us. This is what, we kind of gave them the key outcomes. Even though these outcomes didn't exist when we did the workshop, I said, you may not know what this stuff is, but do you think you've been emphasizing this in your classrooms or not? And this is the response, basically. And the blue says, yeah, I've been strongly emphasizing them. So as you can see, the outcomes 1, 2, and 3 have got some emphasis, which is critical thinking, teamwork, and potentially some level of value proposition discussion. And then the rest of the outcomes drop off because they're a little more ambiguous, and they're the ones that really challenge you, like the persist through failure. That's this one. Okay? So it really challenges people. How do you do that? Especially if we are all wired to make sure that all the factors of safety come out right and all the answers are right and they're in the back of the book. How do you ensure that failure is a good thing? You got to face it sooner or later. So we're processing this, and here's some of the other feedback we had from the faculty. The #1 request from the faculty has been, close the loop. We need more interaction with each other. We all have good ideas. We're doing good things, but we're not talking to each other. I'll tell you how we're going to close this up pretty soon. We want, you know, there was a concept in the Carlson's book called watering hole. That is, you know, gathering around something and start discussing ideas. So we're going to have to create that for our faculty to do that. #2 was, is there more funding to do some more? Going forward, there's 4 things that we're going to focus on, and we have been focusing on over the last year at least. Deeper faculty staff engagement in the mission. Identifiable and focused curricular presence. So again, faculty are doing different modules in their classes, but we need more stuff that shows up in the curriculum that we can point to and says, that's our entrepreneurially minded thing. Expanded student-centered extracurricular opportunities. So Entrepreneur Society is good, contests are good, we're going to have to expand them. There has to be a lot more things that students can sink their teeth in. Integration of the co-curricular experiential learning. That co-op you're doing, that intrapreneurial part of your life, we're going to have to integrate it in a little bit more. And I'm pleased to say there's a lot of people working on these things. It's not just us. So here's, again, pointed towards the faculty a little bit. One of the immediate things we're going to do is we're going to go around seeking 1 champion per department that's has got passion about this subject amongst the faculty, and we're going to ask that person, we'll support you any which way you want, but please organize some discussion groups in your department and talk about the challenges and opportunities of doing this within your subject. You don't even have to worry about other people's subjects. And then we're going to do a couple of summits in the spring term. Maybe one in the front of the spring term, one at the end of the spring term, that all of us come together and re-energize this activity and exchange ideas. And again, we're looking for enthusiasm, skepticism, success, and challenge. All of it is good. I am pleased to say that my good friend Dr. Torfey has agreed to lead this effort. And it's quite a pleasure. Mo has been a big supporter of this program all along. Funding. I have sent you emails, the faculty. There are keen topical grants available out there. I'm willing to talk to you about any ideas that you think that you're excited about, that you want to do along these lines. There are some keen small grants. Internally, however, the EAU has funding for internal grants as long as you're willing to pay attention to these things. We want to go past what we did 4 years ago in our classrooms. We want to address more challenging keen outcomes, the stuff that's not getting addressed right now. Create sustainable deliverables, something that you don't just do once, something that you can keep doing, which, by the way, most of the faculty have been doing what they did 4 years ago. It's very encouraging. Target core engineering science courses. These are challenging. I mean, how do you do entrepreneur mindset in fluids or circuits, right? These are good challenges there. Produce scalable, transferable deliverables, which means stuff that other faculty can copy over into their courses, okay, both at our institutions and other institutions. So really quick, I know that I'm keeping too long. This is going to be the centerpiece of our curricular development. We are proposing, it hasn't gone out of our brain yet, but an Entrepreneurship Innovation Honors Program. This will show up in the next 6 months or so. The first course is already on campus, but it's being run to the freshmen as a pilot course. It's hidden inside IME 100 right now, but it'll eventually have its own personality. So the idea here, folks, is that for every semester you're on campus, you have an opportunity to engage in something that enforces this mindset. Except this will ride on top of your curriculum as a kind of like 12 extra credits if you choose to do it. So this is open as an elective, but it's a thread. And this thread gets supported by everything else that's outside of the classroom. And by the way, these are not all courses. They could be portfolio-based of activities. They could be 3-4 week type lecture type things. So we're not just thinking just give you more courses. We're not going to preach at you. You got to practice it. This is really a practice thread. Okay, we're going to put that in our curriculum one way or the other. The Entrepreneur Society is going to feed this. The co-op is going to tie itself into this thing. And we're going to eventually create something called an IP farm, an intellectual property farm, where we collect intellectual property patent from industry that hasn't been commercialized. We'll bring it to the university. This will be our new TechWorks kind of activity. Okay, and that will get fed into these students, and these students either have their own ideas they're working on or other intellectual property that they're trying to commercialize. And I think it's going to be a beautiful way to practice. You can even write your thesis on it. All of those things have been worked through the Matthew Sanders and the culminating undergraduate experience. The co-extracurricular, we're going to continue the weekly innovation quest, but we are rolling out a project called Kettering Impact. Keep your eyes open. Spring and summer term, you'll see it. Okay, this is going to be a much more larger student participation, good prize money in it, and we're asking the students to identify opportunities for improving their own lives at Kettering and bring solutions forward. Okay? Now, we're going to have to put some criteria on it. That's why we call it the Impact Project. You're going to impact Kettering. So let's get to the why part. Oh, sorry, I missed one thing here. Well, there's the entrepreneurship also through the Office of the Provost. Jackie El-Sayed has been working on reflection pieces that you will have to do at co-op that ties you back into your education. So why? So last slide. Here's why. Why are we doing all this? Because technical prowess is the most powerful change agent in the world. There's nothing more powerful for changing than having the technical knowledge. But there's a condition. It has to be placed in the hands of an entrepreneurially minded technical person. Mastering knowledge alone is going to just give you a nice, comfortable 401k. Which is good. That's better than the rest of the world. If you want to change the world, take what you're learning and take it to a higher level by adopting this mindset. Then you will be a change agent. Now, I will say thank you, and I will put my help wanted sign out for the faculty. I need help. And these are the areas that at least I've identified that need championship. If you're excited about any of this, please talk to me, just like Mo did. And let's get together and move some of these initiatives forward. The door's open, and I thank you for your time, and I'm done.